Welcome back to the RBR Recap, episode 4. I'm Alex Burgos, joined by Gabe Rivas. How are you, Gabe?
I'm doing well. I think you and I are both happy that boxing was in the UK last night. So it was done by around 3 or 4 Pacific time, which means you can enjoy your Saturday. And if you want, sleep in.
Definitely. Yeah, that's always a plus. As an East Coast guy, I'm usually going to bed at 2, 3 in the morning, finishing up recaps and editing and all that good stuff. So I am very thankful for an early night last night. And it was an interesting bout. It was a tale of 2 fights between John Ryder and Daniel Jacobs. And what ended up happening was Ryder got the split decision nod over Daniel Jacobs. Ryder going into the fight was a slight underdog betting wise. And I think most people were curious to see what Daniel Jacobs was going to bring back now with his original trainer and father figure, Andre Rozier. So you thought maybe, and he said it himself, that the old Daniel Jacobs was going to be back, and maybe that last fight, was not the best version of himself, and that there's still a lot left in his career. He talked about things like wanting to be in the Hall of Fame, and still getting those big fights. Unfortunately, he took the loss, and it really damages his ability now at 35 years old to still compete for those titles and things like that, because there's a lot going on in that division at 168 pounds for middleweight. But to recap a little bit of what happened in the fight, it was a split decision, like I said, 115, 113 twice for John Ryder, and the same score, 115, 113 for Daniel Jacobs. It was a WBA title eliminator, and that's for David Morrell's WBA regular title. As you all know, Canelo has the official big boy title, but the WBA is all over the place. So, Gabe, what were your thoughts of this fight?
Once again, John Ryder was in a close fight. Danny Jacobs seemed to control the fight with his jab and his footwork, whereas Ryder seemed to win a lot of the later rounds by being aggressive, closing the distance against Danny Jacobs. And so a lot of people have been saying that John Ryder finally got on the positive side of a close decision. He's been on the losing end of some very close fights, like Jack Arnfield in 2016, Rocky Fielding in 2017, and of course, Callum Smith most recently in 2019. I think that fans and commentators often make the mistake of imposing some sort of cosmic order into the sport of boxing and call this or that victory a result of karma, and say that Ryder deserved for a decision to finally go his way. When in reality, these could all be a set of random events where no one outcome is more deserving than another outside of one's performance in a given domain, which in this case is one's performance inside the ring. Boxing is subjective, however, and especially when you leave it in the hands of the judges, and each fight should be judged independently of past performances or politics or expectations regarding future potential fights. But you also have to consider the added element of being in the UK and the fact that John Ryder had been at super middleweight for a much longer time. And perhaps maybe in the United States, Jacobs would have gotten the nod in this fight. But, it is pleasing to see a good guy like John Ryder finally get a decision go in his favor. You can't help but feel good for a man who many consider to be one of boxing's good guys. So it's nice to see him get a lot of opportunities coming his way.
I think the thing that sticks out here is you would assume, and I guess we're just thinking in the past, but Daniel Jacobs should be favored. This is the type of fight he should have won, but maybe that Daniel Jacobs is gone. We really have to see what's next for him. I mean, there are a ton of names out there, but it's, aside from maybe someone wanting to add him to their resume because he's Daniel Jacobs, you now look at fights like against Jamal Charlo, even the aforementioned David Morrell, Demetrius Andrade, Caleb Plant, all these guys, you wouldn't favor Daniel Jacobs. There are fighters for him to fight, even maybe a rematch with Gabriel Rosado. Sorry, the only Gabe we recognize is Gabe Rivas.
Right.
But Gabriel Rosado was there ringside, and I want to pull something up that he said, kind of mentioning, what you were saying. He said he got robbed in Jacobs. Jacobs now knows how I feel. I don't think he got robbed. I thought it was close, and I thought the scores were indicative of that. Ryder did a good job, like I said, in the second half of the fight. And even looking at the punch stats, I mean, he outlanded Jacobs 135 to 123, according to CompuBox, and he outlanded him in power punches, 121 to 94. So when you start doing that, you visibly buzz the guy, I think, which he did in round 8. You start to, kind of eke out those closer rounds, and you start to think, okay, well, if he snuck maybe one of those early ones then by all means, going after round 6, 7, 8, he did the better job. And so moving forward, what I want to get your opinion on, let's talk about the winner, John Ryder. What are his options with this being a WBA title eliminator? Is David Morrell a fight that he wants to take, or should he maybe wait around for Canelo, maybe cash out against one of these other guys?
As you mentioned, David Morrell is an opportunity out there. This was a WBA title eliminator for the regular title that Morrell has. I think it would be a good opportunity for John Ryder. He would have to cross promotional barriers because Morrell is with PBC. But he hasn't beaten a guy like Jacobs. He hasn't faced the same opposition. He did have a decorated amateur background. He got his interim title in the third fight. I believe he was elevated to regular champ before the fifth fight, I believe as part of the WBA's efforts to consolidate all the WBA championships. So against Ryder, I think that would be a very interesting fight, Ryder and Morrell. However, he is with Matchroom. Eddie Hearn in the post-fight interview with his own platform on Matchroom stated that Canelo would like to fight in the United Kingdom and that Ryder would be at the top of that list, and it would be a very exciting fight for as long as it lasts. Might even be a little bit of revenge. If you remember on the Canelo versus Jacobs undercard, Bilal Akawi, who is a fighter on the Eddie Reynoso stable, was stopped very early by John Ryder. This will be an interesting little storyline to add to that, where Eddie Reynoso can get some revenge against John Ryder. But of course, the big story would be that Canelo Alvarez is headed to the UK, and John Ryder defeated a former Canelo foe in Daniel Jacobs. Looked really good against Callum Smith. A long time ago, fought Billy Joe Saunders. I mean, this would be a really interesting fight and an opportunity for John Ryder. So there is that. There's also Gabe Rosado, who is ringside, as you mentioned. There's also Demetrius Andrade. These are all within the realm of possibilities by being a Matchroom and DAZN fighter. If you want to cross promotional barriers, you could face the likes of David Benavidez and Caleb Plant. Those are very tough fights as well. But within the realm of his own, dynamic between promoter and television platform and Canelo, there are a lot of opportunities for him.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of interesting potential matchups and directions that Ryder can go. And look at that, Matchroom. You can thank Gabe. He's already writing the storyline for you, already promoting the fight. Right. Got me interested in it. I had forgotten about that. I was I think a third round knockout that he knocked out Bilal Akawi. And yeah, that was a little while ago. But yeah, it's very interesting. And I think definitely as the global star that he is, Canelo coming in and making a fight like that would be a cool first splash for him, as he kind of continues his global dominance. But let's not forget, he's got potentially some tricky matchups, coming up for himself as well. Dimitri Bivol and then Gennady Golovkin for the third time. So let's see what happens with that before we're already coordinating John Ryder, the new opponent for Canelo. So next week, Saturday, February 19th, we have Jaime Munguia returning to the ring against Demetrius Ballard, not Demetrius Andrade. The Mexican middleweight Munguia takes on Ballard, defending his WBO Intercontinental middleweight title. That is a mouthful. It's going to be on DAZN, and it's in Tijuana. Gabe, you will be there ringside. Talk to us a little bit about what we can expect from Munguia versus Ballard.
This is a homecoming fight for Jaime Munguia, who I consider to be one of the most exciting and marketable fighters in the middleweight division. He's fun to watch. He has a dedicated Mexican crowd behind him, and it's been rather nice seeing him develop as a professional under the guidance of Eric Morales. I think Eric really wants to make Munguia maintain his essence as a crowd-pleasing, volume-punching fighter. In his fights against Camille Zarameta and Gabe Rosado, we still saw a very active puncher in Munguia, but he's made some significant improvements. He uses his jab more. He keeps up, his hands up for more periods of time. He uses his head movement more, and his punches are more compact and shorter. And I think that this is going to be the kind of fight that leads to bigger ones, fights against Triple G and others in the division. So I'm looking forward to it. And I think a lot of people are expecting for Jaime Munguia to look good in front of his crowd against Demetrius Ballard.
Yeah, I think fans have been a little bit impatient. And sometimes it's not fair to Munguia. You think, you're developing a guy, like you said, is very marketable. You got to give him the time because he had a lot of holes in his game, which to Eric Morales' credit has tightened things up. Like you mentioned, the jab, the defense. I mean, he's looking a lot better than he did even just a few fights ago. And so when you start thinking about those bigger names, yeah, those are established guys. Knowing Munguia's style, it's going to be fun to watch. He's action-packed. So I think he's going to get there. but it may not be, against the Andrades and against, Triple G's and stuff like that. Although he says that's his dream fight. Let's just see how he does against Demetrius-Ballard first. And, he'll continue to progress. If he gets the victory, then we can maybe start talking about some of these other fights, especially if Andrade moves up, then that WBO title, is vacant and free.
And you got to give credit to Jaime Munguia. In 2018, he was offered to face Triple G. He was very young and still green in his career, and he still said yes to that opportunity. The Nevada State Athletic Commission did not allow him to do that. And he has said in previous interviews that he saw that as a kind of blessing, that things happen for a reason. He was able to take his career into a different direction. He was able to defeat Saddam Ali and become a champion at 154 pounds and slowly develop his career. And so I think he needs to take advantage of that and allow himself to develop, allow himself to listen to his managers, his promoters, and of course, his new trainer, Eric Morales.
Right, exactly. And imagine if he takes that fight. No doubt, we don't know who Jaime Munguia is today. He becomes a footnote of a knockout in the past, and we never get to see him develop. He's a young guy. Like, let's see what he's all about. He's getting better. He's progressing. So, let him mold and become the fighter that he's going to be. It should be a good fight, though. That's February 19th. That's next Saturday on DAZN. The other bout we have will be earlier in the day. Actually, ESPN Plus picked it up, and it's in the UK. It's Amir Khan versus KHAN-BROOK. That's a Sky Sports box office boxer card for those in the UK. For us stateside, it's going to be on ESPN Plus. This is a grudge match, which, should have happened 35 years ago. But, we finally get it. So at least we'll see, what's going to happen. Obviously, both fighters now in the twilight of their careers, potentially could be the last bout, depending on how it plays out for either one of these guys. And so, Gabe, what are you expecting between Khan versus Brook? What can we expect from this fight?
This is being marketed as a historic rivalry, a long-awaited battle. But personally, it wasn't a fight I was exactly clamoring for. I'm sure people are going to enjoy it. It's going to be a fun fight simply because both fighters really don't like each other and because they're both very vulnerable. So I think it's going to be exciting for as long as it lasts. And, Amir Khan is entering as a slight underdog. So it's a pretty evenly matched fight. So it should be good.
Definitely. And for our Box Bet Pod audience and the betting fans, Amir Khan is a plus 150. KHAN-BROOK is a minus 180. So it's teetering along that line of like kind of what Jacobs-RYDER was going into their fight. Very close. And I'm sure that line will change a little bit, but Khan is going to be going into this one as the underdog. And so it remains to be seen. Like you said, some of their vulnerabilities. I mean, we know Amir Khan has had issues taking punches. KHAN-BROOK after his surgeries with his eye. It's just these guys are not the fighters that they once were. And so I think for that, it just makes it interesting because you never know. One punch could end it for either guy. And so I'll definitely be watching. Maybe like you, I wasn't clamoring for it at this point, but it's been made. Let's enjoy it. And so that'll be next week. We'll obviously have some talk tracks and recaps and reaction to both of those fights. For Gabe Rivas, I'm Alex Burgos. Thanks for checking out the RBR Recap.